Some of you may wonder why I carry a walking stick. It's to remind me to tell you that I have secondary progressive MS, and according to my MD, I can neither walk, talk, nor write. Now, do things always stay the same? Are doctors always right? Or is there a possibility that maybe we should make some changes? Now, a little bit of my story. Actually, if everybody were closer together, I'd get down in the audience. But since it isn't, I'm going to stay up here for a minute anyway. A long time ago, what seems like another lifetime to me, I had a problem. The problem was I would go to walk and my right leg would drag a little. I went to see the doctor and I said, my leg doesn't work right. And he said, well, you should expect that. After all, you were shot, you've got a bullet that's lodged in your leg, it's by some nerves. Every now and then that'll get inflamed, and when it does, well, you'll have trouble walking. Well, I bought that. And then time went by, and the leg would bother me every now and then. And then all of a sudden I was sitting in college one day reading my textbook, and all of a sudden there was 2 lines in the book instead of 1. I went to see the doctor and said, Doctor, I've got a sudden onset of double vision. Can you help me? He says, well, Clive, you should expect that there was that explosion and we pulled the glass out of your eyes, and every now and then those muscles will get tense. And then, thinking, well, that's all right, I believed him. And because I believed him, I took what he had, I didn't pursue it. Then one day I was up in the mountains walking, and all of a sudden it was like, do we have any Star Trek fans in here? Do you all know who Data is? You flip the switch and... Well, I was walking up in the mountains, I was hiking, I was a little overheated, and all of a sudden somebody flipped my switch. I mean, I couldn't take another step. And I sat down after an hour or 2, I got so I could walk again. I went home, and the next day I was just doing things in the living room, and all of a sudden somebody flipped my switch again. This caused concern. I went to see the doctor and said, Doctor, what's wrong with me? He said, well, Clive, you should know. Your mother died at 43 of a heart attack. Your father died of 48 of a heart attack. It's the family ticker. Your mother's heart would sometimes just slow down. That's what's happening with you. Well, I believed him. And at the same time, I had terrible allergies that just drove me crazy. And one day I was reading in a book, and it said that if you took bee pollen, it would help almost everything. It helped blood pressure, it would help allergies, it would help energy. And I thought, snake oil, nothing could possibly do all this. So I started doing research and more research. Everything said it would do what it said it would. So I decided to try it. I started taking the bee pollen, and all of a sudden my leg wasn't dragging anymore. I could do a jig, I could hop, I could skip, I could do all the things I couldn't do before. The fatigue left. The allergies improved. And I thought, wow. Then I went to see my doctor, and he said, Clive, it's been a long time since you've been in here. I said, yes, I've been taking the bee pollen. That stuff is great. He said, let me see that. He went in the other room. He came back after a while. He said, this might be good for some people, but it's poisoning your system. You got to quit taking it. You know, like a dummy, I believed him. And I quit taking it, and a couple of weeks later, I woke up and my feet were numb. And you know how sometimes you'll cross your legs and you get the pins and needles? And when the pins and needles get you, you don't want to move it, but you know you got to move it. Well, that's the way my feet were, and it wouldn't stop. So I went to see the doctor, and he examined me, couldn't find anything wrong, no pinched nerves. Called my wife aside, said, it's all in his head. You got to get him straightened out. There's nothing wrong with his legs. Well, next week I had a business trip I had to go on, and I went off to Tennessee, and I woke up one morning in Tennessee, and now I couldn't feel any of my legs. I mean, it was like they weren't even there. Other people was panicked that I wouldn't get home. When I finally arrived at home, got to see the doctor, my legs were now replaced with constant tremors. My head was shaking like this all the time, and it would never stop. And my arms were jerking like this. And I went in. By the time they had finished doing all of the studies and determined that I had secondary progressive MS, I was talking like this because one half of my tongue didn't work. I could still move my arms, but I had no idea where they were in space. They shook nonstop. I was basically quadriplegic. One day, a friend came over to visit me, and I'd known her for years. And when I tried to talk to her with one half of my tongue not working, constantly shaking, it pained her so much she couldn't get to my side of the room. When she left, I made up my mind that no matter what, I was going to walk again. I got my doctor on the telephone and demanded a cure, to which he responded, Clive, you have secondary progressive MS. And I said, yeah, but we're going to beat it, aren't we? And he said, Clive, there is no cure for secondary progressive MS. And after a long argument, the argument ended with him saying, Clive, you've got to accept the fact that you're going to spend the rest of your life watching TV with someone else changing the channels. I couldn't accept that. So I waited till I was all alone by myself, and using every ounce of power I could muster, I pushed myself up, I stood straight and tall, and I went to take a step. As I started to move forward, I realized my feet weren't moving. I tried to bring my arms up to catch me, but they didn't move, and I fell flat on my face on the floor. While I was there on the floor, it was like I had a vision. And I saw myself speaking to huge audiences, and I was teaching people, in this life, it doesn't matter what happens to you. It matters how you respond to it. And then it was like the curtain dropped again, and this time I'm teaching people, take responsibility for your own life. If you did it, take the blame or take the credit. Whatever you did, it's your responsibility. If you don't like your wife, repent. Maybe you will. On the other hand, if you don't like your wife, you picked her. There's nobody else to blame. And it works the other way around too. Everything in life we need to take responsibility for. And then the curtain fell again, and this time I'm teaching people about herbs and supplements and nutrition and how you can combine conventional medicine and holistic medicine to get the best out of both. Because frankly, there are some good things in modern medicine. It isn't all bad. On the other hand, as the late Dr. Christopher would say, when God built this world, He made mistakes. And every now and then, He would put something in the world that would cause us pain and suffering. But every time He made a mistake, within 50 yards, He planted an antidote. An example would be, how many of you have ever touched stinging nettle? Was it fun? Did you enjoy the tingles? There is an herb that will always be found within 50 yards of, called plantain. You can rub some plantain, break it up, rub it on the stinging nettle, and instantly it is cured. It gets rid of all the sting instantly. Now, looking at this audience, we have a group, I would guess the majority of us here are 50 plus. Looks like we have some 60s and some 70s, and we've got a few young people who I'm glad to have here because you're going to pick up some good information. But we're in a heart attack zone. How many of you have a friend who's had a heart attack? How many of you have a friend who's died of a heart attack? Would you like to know how to stop a heart attack faster than anything the doctor has? Something that works just almost instantly. And almost all of you have it home in your refrigerators. Let's see by a show of hands, everybody who has Tabasco sauce in their refrigerator. Tabasco sauce can stop a heart attack. All you have to do is take 3 tablespoons full of Tabasco sauce, and instantly the immune system will start working the way it's supposed to. Your body will come out of shock. Your blood will start circulating. Clots even dissolve. Now, also, about the same time you take that, if it were me, I would take some white willow bark. White willow bark is nature's form of aspirin. Now, we've all heard an aspirin a day, right? It's going to stop heart attacks, right? Truth of the matter is, from actual studies, it does. But unfortunately, at the same time, it increases your chances of dying by liver or intestinal problems, and your life is not extended at all. It's just made more miserable before you die. But you can take white willow bark. White willow bark does not have any of the side effects. Interesting thing, huh? Now, we have a group here. Looks like there might be more than one who has a little bit of arthritis. Anybody have trouble getting up in the morning? Or a little trouble after you've sat in the car too long, or even if you've sat in the seats too long, even if the speaker was really good? Well, arthritis is nasty. People are walking on crutches, they're getting new hips, they're getting new knees, all things we didn't have a few years ago. The reason that happens, for the most part, is deficiency in 3 things. One of them is collagen, one of them is synovial fluid, and one of them is the enzymes to get everything to do what they're supposed to do. Bee pollen will provide every enzyme, every coenzyme the human body needs. There's a product, I've got some information on it back at my table, called BioCell Liquid Collagen. It will supply the body with the acids it needs to produce synovial fluid, which is the lubricating. That's what lubricates your joints. It makes them so that they're slippery and so that you don't grind away the cartilage. Collagen replaces, and all of a sudden, joints rebuild. Bones become more flexible. They're less likely to break. Strange thing that happens is you start developing more muscle. Muscle burns fat faster than fat burns fat. And because muscle burns fat faster, when I started taking it, in the first week, I gained a whopping 4 pounds. I'm thinking, this isn't so good. But then my wife says, well, you don't look like you've gained 4 pounds. We put the tape measure on, and I had dropped a full inch off my waist. I changed fat to muscle just by adding one thing. Now, is that impressive? And since I'm talking about health, and I'm going to deviate a little bit from what you really maybe expected. Can I get a volunteer from the audience to shout out the 3 most important things in our life? Air is important. Water is important. Food, God. Now, would we have food, water, or air if we didn't have God? Okay, God is number 1. What else do we need? We need what?
Obama will provide all of it.
Oh, Obama!
It's called Obamacare.
Obamacare! And he's going to take over the country, right? And because he's taking over the country, he's going to be in full control. We call the United States of America the abomination. Right? Wrong. But the problem is, in our country, we are sick. They're taking away our freedoms right and left. Religion is under attack. How many of you would agree with that? Natural health is under attack. And this is nothing new. How many of you remember back when there was a young senator by the name of Orrin Hatch, and he was telling us how he's going to save all of our herbs when the FDA was going to take them away? Some of us in here are old enough to remember that, back in 1995. Okay. Well, anyway, Orrin Hatch said, well, I will stop all this by very simply passing a bill called the Health Freedom Act, which will allow people to tell the truth about herbs. And when people know what they will do, then they won't let the FDA take them away. Well, as this was progressing, the National Health Federation approached me and said, Hatch's bill is not going to pass in time. The FDA is scheduled to take everything away, and once they take them away, even if the Hatch bill is passed, the food supplements are going to be gone. You're going to have to get a prescription to take vitamin C. Somebody has to sue the FDA. How many of you would like to sue the FDA? How many of you have the courage to sue the FDA? Well, let me tell you what happens when you sue the FDA. They asked me if I would file a suit, and they said they had 5 other people who were going to join me in the suit. I said, fine, put my name on the list. We filed the suit on Friday. By Monday, now that's not a long time, we filed it on Friday, the following Monday, everybody but me backed out of the suit. And the reason they did was all of the telephone calls threatening our lives and the lives of our family if we didn't drop the suit. Now, all the calls were anonymous, so we don't know the source or where they came from. But everybody backed out. Well, I'm hard to intimidate. And so I said, well, I'll stay. And then I went to see Stan Malmstrom. How many of you remember him? A great natural healer. And I said, Stan, you've been arrested 8 times for saving people's lives. What can they do to you? You're 83 years old. And he said, okay, I'll come back. We sued the FDA, and they left the herbs and the supplements on the market, but they didn't give up. Now, we eventually got the Hatch Bill passed and the Health Freedom Act. We made it harder for the FDA to go after things. But they were still after supplements. How many of you know what tryptophan is? Tryptophan. It is an amino acid found naturally in food. How many of you get sleepy after you eat turkey? Okay, it's an amino acid that's found in turkey and in milk and several things. That's why warm milk helps you sleep. It works better than any sleeping pill. Well, it was interfering with the sales of sleeping pills. And you know, the pharmaceutical companies have a certain amount of clout with our politicians. So they didn't like tryptophan. Well, strangely enough, some company in Japan made a bad batch of tryptophan, made 500 and some odd people sick. When it made all those people sick, we immediately decided, well, tryptophan is bad. The FDA said, we are going to remove tryptophan. It's dangerous. There was one contaminated batch. How many contaminated batches of food have we ever seen in the United States? Have they pulled hamburger off the market? What about cheese? What about salad? We've had contaminated all of those. But they took away tryptophan because it interfered with sales. Scary, huh? So we still have an ongoing battle. We have to fight to preserve our freedoms. We have to fight to preserve our herbs and nutrition. Now, I brought some books. Sir, can I get you to hold up those 3 books that are sitting on the edge of the counter? Yes. The one where it looks like the detective, that tells you about something that's recently been discovered, a natural food called transfer factor. If you blend it with the right amount of herbs, it will boost your immune system 437%. Second book is One Man's Victory. It tells how I went from quadriplegic 35 years ago to where I am today and what you need to take. And the last book is called 18 Steps to Greatness. Now, the reason that is important, How many people signed the Declaration of Independence?
56.
How many?
56.
56. Is 56 a lot of people? We have more than that watching in this group today. And those are the people who caused us to have independence. 56. But the thing that they have to learn some skills that most of us don't have. They have to become a good, polished speaker, somebody who can move things. You know, that's why the Democrats are always trumping the conservatives. It's because they are good speakers. They learn how to get people's emotions fed. And we show statistics. We show facts. When what we have to do is we need to learn how to create emotion, move the people, and then back up our emotion with facts. And that way we can start to heal our nation. We need to learn to set goals. We need to learn all of the basics of becoming great, that we may return to the nation that I grew up in, a nation of freedom, a nation under God, a nation with supplements and all of the natural healing methods, that we can live, as the Bible says, to be 120. Thank you very much.